Alrighty, guys, and welcome back to the Basketball Fix podcast. Now, today we're continuing on with our one-on-ones, and today I've got a very special guest, young development player, we should say here, from the Tasmanian JackJumpers, Archie Woodhill. Archie, mate, welcome to the show.
Hey, Josh, thanks for having me.
Nah, mate, I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, we've had a little bit of a conversation, and it wasn't one-to-one. It was also through a press conference as well, and there was questions firing left, right, and centre, mate, so you probably were a bit over your head, but obviously very, very fun. What's the season been like, mate? We'll break it down in depth a little bit later on, but what's the season like playing as a Tasmanian JackJumper?
It's been great. Yeah, definitely couldn't speak highly enough of it. It's been awesome to be a part of the JackJumpers. And yeah, the press conference was my first one, so it was a bit out of the blue. I didn't know I was doing it until after the game, but yeah, so it was a bit over my head. But hopefully, I get a bit better at them.
No, definitely, mate. It comes with time and it comes with experience and that sort of stuff as well. It's even worse when you just get put on the spot, mate, and you're sort of thrown into the deep end, I guess, and start to have to answer some of these questions that we sit back and ask you guys. I know it wouldn't be the funnest thing after a basketball game of that sort as well, but let's dive into sort of getting to know more about you. That's what these segments are all about. It's about knowing Archie and who you are, where you grew up, and obviously what you did outside of basketball, and then we dive into that basketball career a little bit more as well. And, you know, everyone sees yourself on the court and all these other NBL players, but we don't really know you guys, especially the ones coming through. We know the Bryce Cottons, you know, we knew the Mitch Creeks when they were playing, the Xavier Cooks, those top guys in the NBL. But you guys who are just coming through, making a name for yourself, don't really get the chance unless you get to that level with how obviously small, in a sense, the NBL media world is. But give us a bit of an insight, mate. Where did you grow up? What did you get up to as a young fella? And outside of basketball, were there any other sports that took your fancy?
Yeah, no, I grew up in Sydney. I lived in the same street my whole life. So I lived in Kalara my whole life. Grew up playing rugby a lot. That was my first sporting love, I reckon. Always wanted to end up playing for Wallabies, but then I realised I'd be 6'9" and plus. So I thought probably could play something else. And my older brother, he's 5 years older than me, so he started playing basketball late in high school, and Dad had a look at me and said, "You probably should start playing as well." And that's what happened, and I kept playing and fell in love with it, and yeah, I haven't looked back since. But yeah, I definitely was an athlete growing up and wanted to play rugby, but I still love it. Still support the Roosters in the NRL, but yeah. Basketball happened in high school for me a lot, and that was my first passion. My high school basketball team had never won the championship before, and my year was always undefeated ever since year 5. So going into year 12, there's a lot of pressure for us to win, and the year before we had just lost one game by 5 points, so we came second. Yeah, year 12, we ended up winning it, which was awesome. And I always say that's my best basketball experience. So that's where it all started for me, really. It was high school and playing with all my mates.
No, definitely. It's the funnest time, I guess, when there's not as much pressure, there's not as much expectation as obviously there are when you start to play professional basketball, whether it's the NBL 1 level, you go over to college, or you play in the NBL like you are right now. But after you finished high school, was there any, I guess, interest from yourself or other colleges in the States, obviously, to potentially pursue a pathway playing in the college system over in America? Or was that sort of diverted a little bit to stay in Australia and see how the NBL was? Because the NBL has genuinely become a serious pathway to not only other big, you know, worldwide leagues, but obviously the NBA as well.
Yeah, my brother tried college. He went to a Div 2 school, and it was a business school. So he went and studied business over there. Ended up, we went and visited him a few times. Ended up, you know, he never wanted to have a career of basketball or anything. Like, he went there to study and have a great experience. So when I was looking into it, you know, I didn't really want to leave home. I never really thought of my future, really. Like, I hadn't thought about the NBL. I haven't thought about what's next for me. And then I ended up going to the AS for 6 months, paying out of pocket, living there just because I wanted to get better. It was just crazy. Looking back at that, that was something that really defined the next steps in my life, going from there to then having an opportunity to be a development player for the Kings. Again, I had no clue what that meant or what I was going into, and just the level of professional basketball, I guess. And then as soon as I got involved with that, I fell in love. I was like, I could do this for a living. Like, this is pretty cool. And then, yeah, just stuck with it. I think playing NBL 1 in Sydney and having the 2 years with the Kings, and then kind of having a bit of a year off, not having any NBL team, well, because I wanted to go back to Sydney. You know, being from Sydney, I didn't know if I was ready to take the next leap in my career. But I definitely think coming down to Northwest Tassie for NBL 1 was, you know, at the time seemed like a crazy thing to do, but probably the best thing for my career. Like, I've loved it. Tasmania's become a second home for me. And then, you know, signing with the Jackies and the season we just had, yeah, not the greatest result, but, you know, a bit of a up and down season, but it was unreal. I loved it for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's been such an interesting career, obviously, and we'll dive in a little bit more into that career now. So, like you mentioned, you spent a couple of years at the Sydney Kings, and there was kind of a little bit of a gap in between the middle of them as well. But what was that experience like? Because the Kings are known as one of the top 3 franchises, I think we'll go with, in the NBL history. You'd probably put them in the same breath as the Perth Wildcats, Melbourne United, and then the Sydney Kings are the 3 pioneer clubs in the NBL. What was that sort of learning experience like? Who were some of the guys that you really put yourself under, I guess, to sort of take as much out of them as possible? Because there was a lot of success around that time with the Sydney Kings. They'd won a championship in one of those years as well. They were looking really, really good another one of those years. There's just been a plethora, I guess you could say, of incredible players who have come through that door. So who are a few of the players that you sort of looked up to and worked closely with at the Sydney Kings?
Yeah, I would say Xavier Cooks was a huge one for me. At that time, he was, you know, in my second year, he was the MVP. Like, he was a freak. And training against him every day, it was ridiculous. Like, just the opportunity and like the development that was that gave me was ridiculous. Also, Jordie Hunter, another big, he went to school, the same school as me. So we had that connection. And I think those two, for me, as Australian bigs, were definitely impactful for my development. And I loved going against them every day. They wanted the best for me, and I guess I was there to make them better as well. They were there to make me better. So it was a pretty cool situation to be in.
No, definitely. It's such especially like, you mentioned 2 guys there in Cooks and Hunter. Like, they are 2 premier players in the NBL. Like, like you mentioned, Cooks MVP, Hunter's has had an amazing season so far and still could obviously, go further in his development. Who do you sort of see yourself similar to? If you were to describe yourself as a player, let's go back that 3 or 4 years now, because obviously you've developed tremendously since then. But as a player back then, where did you see yourself? Were you an inside player? Were you a double threat player, where you can play inside and out? Or what were you really working on in those particular early stages?
Yeah, I think I've always been someone who's been like the best when I drive towards the ring, and be aggressive and take it to the ring. I think that's something that back then I really prided myself on. That was the best part of my game. And watching Xavier Cooks, the way he can play below the 3-point line and get down to the ring, and just is a playmaker at that size. That's something that I thought I could definitely do that. And another thing, definitely watching those guys is with Jordie Hunter, the way he, explodes out of the pick and roll and has such a quick first step, and just jump to the ring. Just the speed and athleticism is something that, like, I thought would be definitely part of my basketball progression and journey. So
No, definitely. I think it's been awesome. I think obviously, and we'll get into your Tasmanian stuff. And I asked you a question on the press conference about a particular jack jumper, and we'll touch on that very shortly. But let's go into your NBL one career here as well, as we sort of follow the progression down, obviously, to where you are right now. And you played for the Sydney Comets in 2023. You put up 15.2 points per game and 7.3 rebounds as well, which is incredible stat line. Like, that is where we are seeing, this is the reason why you've got a development contract and why you're still floating around in the NBL and you're going to have a long career in the NBL, because it's not like we see all these guys, especially young guys, going to the NBL one competitions and dominate. It just doesn't happen for every single person. So 15 points and 7 rebounds. What was that season like? Who were some of the players that you played with? Who were some of your favorite matchups? And what were some of your best moments that season in terms of a developmental sort of pathway as well?
Yeah, NBL 1 is interesting because it can either go good or bad. Everyone has different games, they're ref differently, and it's definitely hard to transition from training against all the bigs in the NBL, especially like Jordie Hunter and Xavier Cooks, and having to be extremely physical all the time. And, they can handle the physicality, so it looks different defending those guys. So it takes a while to, translate the way you play into that, the league below. But yeah, no, it was Sydney Comets. I really enjoyed playing there. They had Lockie Lonergan was the coach. He was with Sydney when I was there my first year. So we had a connection there, which was awesome. I had Johnny Signarak, the big fella from Sydney, who's a good mate of mine. So playing with him was awesome.
Yeah.
And I had to play against Alex Higgins-Titcher, who's had an outstanding season this year. But I always knew he was pretty good. He's a freak athlete, a teammate of mine. And going against him was pretty fun, I must say. I don't think he ever beat me, but it was always pretty fun.
Yeah, that's the thing, eh? It's the relationships and I guess the sort of friendships that you build with all these players on opposition teams, and eventually you never know. The NBL is such a small league right now with only the 10 teams, and it only takes a few people obviously to move around, and all of a sudden you're playing with the same guys. And AHT, massive shout out to him, he's had an incredible season. But you spoke about this earlier, the move to Tasmania. I think most mainlanders, I guess we can call the rest of Australia. I know the Jackies obviously love playing to that as well, the mainlander and Tasmania as well. But most mainlanders see, I spoke with Darren Smith, your CEO at the Tasmania JackJumpers yesterday afternoon, and mainlanders see Tasmania as just a tourist destination. And there's a stigma around it of being a tourist destination for retirees, 55-year-old plus. Go down to Tasmania, have a bit of a look around, beautiful spot. But now with professional sports starting to take over, and we're starting to see obviously the Jackies come in there. We've got the AFL coming up there very shortly. There's obviously been the BBL cricket as well for such a long time. What were your first initial thoughts when you thought, maybe I'll go see what Northwest Tasmania is like in the NBL 1 competition?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. I knew I wanted to get out of the East, and I knew the South was the strongest NBL 1 conference. And I had an opportunity to play in it. And we fly from Devonport to Melbourne every off game. Couldn't get any more professional than that. You actually travel, which is pretty cool. It's a bit different to driving to different suburbs in Sydney. So I liked that. I liked this seemed to have a bit more of a professional standard to it. But yeah, it was definitely interesting. I'd never been to Tasmania before flying down here for my first pre-season for NBL 1. But yeah, I didn't think too much of it. I just thought it's going to be another team. I didn't really know what was going to happen. Just thought it was going to be a great thing to get exposure for me and my career. But yeah, it's been like a second home to me. I love it. Yeah, it's been awesome. My family love it. My dad comes down all the time, probably too much, but no, it's been unreal for sure.
No, definitely. And you finished that season there as well with 11.4 points per game and 6.3 rebounds, playing in all 22 games that season as well. And that's now where I guess we get to the part of the show where most of the people obviously have seen you floating around on their screens, and they're just playing for the Tasmanian JackJumpers. And it's been an interesting season. You come in this season, obviously fresh off them winning a championship, and the sky is the limit. Essentially, people are talking about dynasties, which this team has been for such a long time. They've only, in their 4 years, they've had an NBL finals, they've had a championship, they've made a semi-finals, and obviously, unfortunately, which we'll break down very shortly, finished 7th and later this year and missed out in the NBL finals for the first time in league history. But this team and this culture and what they've built in such a short amount of time, it must be exciting but daunting to join and walk into the Tasmanian JackJumpers building.
Yeah, when I first got down to Tassie, they were in the finals. So I was watching them play Melbourne with my whole NBL 1 team. Just the love everyone had for them, just the passion. It was crazy. It was really, I don't know. It was interesting to go dive into Tassie, and that was one of my first experiences. And then playing here, and then getting signed with the Jackies. And we actually came up here in the preseason, back up to Northwest, and I was talking about this yesterday with some of the coaches. It was like I had a bit of my own fan club up here because I just played. We rock up back to Ulverston and they're all chanting my name and waiting for me to get in the court, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's always daunting going to a new organization. Yeah, the way that the clubs run, you really find out pretty early that everyone's equal there, from front office to fans to sponsors. Everyone's a part of the club. It's built on respect and charismatic people that just want to get to know you and see how you're going and want the best for you. So it's pretty awesome. Scott is someone who just wants the best for you, no matter where you are in your career. He just wants you to be at your best, whether it's to get more money somewhere else or to develop and play in the NBL. It's pretty cool to see for sure.
No, it definitely is. And I think there's such a family feel about the Tasmanian JackJumpers. And I think that's what happens when you've got such a small community around you. We speak about all the time, Tasmania is a population of around 500,000 people. You compare that to where I've grown up. Perth City alone is about 2 million people. So it's just unbelievable how small it is. Everyone knows everyone. There's 1,001 jokes that I could have thrown in there as well, but we'll keep this strictly professional there, mate. But I guess I want to dive in deeper to the organisation from a basketball standpoint. You mentioned Scott. You've obviously got Mika Vakona there as well. You've got Darren Smith up the top as well, running the organisation from a basketball operations perspective. They're 3 guys with, a plethora of knowledge, obviously some NBL experience you can really dive into. What have they been like, and what are some of the advice that they're giving you at such an early stage in your NBL career that's really helping you as the seasons go on?
Yeah, I think everyone's really been a great support, and obviously it changes. They have different relationship with every person, but again, it's just nothing that I haven't experienced it before. They will genuinely have a conversation with you and want the best for you. They'll talk to you about things that they see, what they like, and things they need to work on, and just development on and off the court is unreal from everyone in the organization for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, and it's awesome to see though as well. And we'll go on the court. So you've played the 4 games this year for an average of 6.2 minutes in those 4 games with 3 points per game and just under 1 rebound as well. Obviously, it's been a bit of an interesting year because I spoke to Darren, and like I said earlier, we had a couple of conversations, on air about obviously what the team's going to look like going into next season, because you guys were probably a little bit older into around the league compared to other teams around the league, and probably not as athletic, obviously, as some of the other teams around the competition. And that was a few of the things that he spoke about in terms of we're looking for younger guys and we're looking for more athleticism. And that gets me excited because, especially for a young guy like yourself, this is the chance where you can continue to build with guys like Nick Stoddard, obviously Sean McDonald, these other young guns around you to really make Tasmania a home for the next 5 to 10 years. So going into next season, I guess, what are you most excited for, and what are some of the challenges that are going to be waiting for NBL 26 for your opponents, I guess, on the court?
Yeah. It's going to be huge. I think this off season is going to be my biggest off season. I've got to come back in better shape and the best player I've ever been before the season starts, and that's something that I want to achieve and prove that I can, play at the next level. But yeah, it's definitely an opportunity for me. And again, the other young guys around me and in the club. We had a bit of a joke throughout the whole season that, we'd always call Clint pretty old, and we called him an old head, and then we'd all kind of say the whole team's pretty old. So it was pretty funny. Yeah, there was a bit of a drop off. I think Sean McDonald kind of got put with us, the young guys. So, but no, it's going to be a great opportunity next year. The next 2 years should be pretty huge, and I hope it's just just keeps kind of developing and going towards the positive in my career, and hopefully I can showcase, how hard I work and how hard this team works for the Tassie fans. And yeah, I think it's going to be pretty cool.
No, definitely. And I want to say as well, I know we sort of spoke on that press conference, mate, but I'll have a chance right now, obviously, to congratulate you on the 2-year contract. Like, we spoke about that briefly, and I want to dive into it just a little bit more, because being so young and still finding your feet and learning the system and becoming the best player you can, and you speak about, obviously, coming back fitter and obviously the most complete player you've ever been, to have that 2 years of security where you know where you're going to go from, September to March. You know where you're going to be. You're playing basketball there. You know the system. You know the team. What has that been like mentally for yourself, where you can just be like, cool, now it's time to lock in, and it's not time for me to try and find myself a job over the next couple of years?
Yeah, as you said before, like with Sydney, like I had a lot of uncertainty, like new coaches coming in and years off in between. I'd never, had this security before. And, it's exciting. It's pretty cool that I know where I'm going to be and the opportunity I'll have for the next 2 years. It's pretty weird because, obviously with NBL 1 happening, like obviously I'm there to compete and get better there and play as a team, but I'm also using it as an off season and getting ready for, my on season, the NBL. So
yeah,
I think it's going to give me definitely a lot of motivation, just to strive to come back, and not be a development player, try and become a rostered player, try and, prove myself and play the way I know I can.
No, definitely. And I want to ask this question as well, because you're probably playing with one of the best big men in the NBL. He's a guy who is, I'm sure it would have made the rounds in Tasmania about the Tanzania Will Magnay sort of situation with the Los Angeles Lakers over there in America. And obviously I'll get a bit of an insight to that shortly. But what's it like playing with him? Because you got a couple of opportunities last year, just purely based around the fact that there was just so many injuries and your roster was really, really depleted. And you probably weren't expecting to play too many games last season, but to play the 4 games, especially in that late patch of the season where wins were really crucial as you try to keep your season alive. What were sort of some of the biggest lessons that he's taught you? And you spoke about earlier, obviously, playing against Xavier Cooks on the training court. Well, I'm sure there would be no bigger challenge than playing against Will Magnay on the training court as well.
Yeah, again, it's Will Magnay. It's pretty cool. When he went down, it was a lot of people wrote us out and said the season's over. And I remember we went to Melbourne like the next day or so to play Melbourne United, and we ended up winning. And we couldn't have been with higher spirits in that game, and being there was pretty cool. Like I was, a bit nervous sitting on the court, on the bench, sorry, not knowing what's going to happen, if I'm going to get on or, but absolutely pumped. Like, this is my opportunity to show that I can play. And when I did get on, he would talk to me, like when we got back from wherever we went for the away games, or if we played in Tassie, he would come up and talk to me and just say, go out and be you. Like, you yourself. You're not there to play as me. You're not there to play as Will Magnay. Go play as Archie, and just be aggressive. Like, you can do it. You can play. Like, so it was really cool to have that, that confidence instilled by someone else. And yeah, training with him is pretty cool. Especially like now he's coming back from injury. He's getting back into contact and building up again. So we've been doing a lot of workouts, and he's still with Will Magnay, I can tell you that. He hasn't gone away. So no, but the Tanzania thing was pretty funny. I was with him when that was happening, so he was showing me. It was all I can say was, "Oh, you're going to the Lakers? That's pretty cool." I was like, I think I might have made a joke about him telling LeBron that he's my goat and to give me a shout out or something. But pretty funny.
No, it was a bit of a stitch up, but also really great, I guess, from an NBL perspective, and then obviously a Tanzania perspective, mate, where clearly the eyes are on you guys. You know what I mean? There is eyes on the team. There's eyes on obviously the NBL, which is a really great thing. If you continue to work hard and continue to have an incredible career, then you just don't know where you could possibly be. There's international basketball, there's the NBA, there's European leagues. There is a plethora of outstanding leagues out there who are looking for outstanding players all the time. But I want to touch on one player, and then we've got a couple of funny questions, mate, to wrap up the show. But Clint Steindl, obviously, the announcement of his retirement over the last couple of days, not many probably saw it 100% coming. As a Perth Wildcat supporter my whole life growing up, he was obviously a major part of that team and had some incredible success for them. But he still looked like he had it. Like that game where I was in the press conference with you, he dunked the ball against Melbourne United, I think it was, or whoever you guys were playing. And I'm sat there going, is he mid-30s or is he mid-20s? So what is he like as a leader? And were you a little bit shocked by the news of his retirement, or was there sort of a bit of chatter around that around the team, I guess?
Yeah, Clint's the most professional player I've ever seen in my life, just from just the things he does day to day. I think Scott calls him a pilot just because he's got the checklist. Like every day he goes in there and ticks off everything he has to do every day. And it's inspirational to watch, just the way he handles himself. And yeah, it doesn't seem like that was, his last year. He was awesome. He had a couple games where he was great. And, like you said, it showed late 20s Clint Steindl. That dunk, we weren't expecting that either. That was crazy. He tried to do that at training as well and got yelled at. I think Will Magnay shot a hook shot in a scrimmage, and he went up to get an offensive rebound and try to dunk it, but the hook shot was going in, and I think Scott had a few words to him. So I'm glad he actually got one in game. That was pretty cool. But yeah, he was a great captain. I think he was a man of few words because it was kind of like a led for the group, like a group-led team. Like we all wanted to be, wanted to speak, wanted to show that, we're all a team. I think he was obviously at the top of that list and would keep it short and sweet. But he knew what the team was capable of and had trust in everyone. So he was definitely a great guy. And I'm excited to see what's next for him. He's got a lot going for him. But it was a shock. We didn't really know. A lot of people, there's rumors going around. You never know what's going to happen. But it wasn't a shock. But no, it's I'm happy for him and Kayla and his kids. And yeah.
It's going to be interesting, obviously. I think, again, the Tasmanian JackJumpers has been in the league for 4 years now, but he sums up every single piece of what it is to be a Tasmanian JackJumper. And he's going to be a massive hole in the locker room. And there's going to be some guys who are going to have to completely try to, do what he did for such a long period of time. And it may take 2 or 3 players to replicate what he did in terms of leadership, both on and off the court, but an incredible career. And I wanted to get your perspective, obviously, from being one of the younger guys in the locker room as well, because he would have been such a great leader for you. But let's get into a few funny questions here, mate. Obviously, you've become a big fan favourite, it's clear to say. We do a Tasmanian JackJumpers podcast called the Tasmanian Takeover. I'm not sure if you've seen it on social media by chance, but we've got Birdo and JD. So Birdo is from Sydney, who's moved to Tasmania, just like you, mate. And JD is from Tasmania, who's moved to Perth. So we've got a mainlander down to Tassie and a Tassie man onto the mainland. So it's an interesting dynamic there. But they absolutely love you, Nick, all these young guys on the team, and they're obsessed with your hair, mate. What's the go with the skullet sort of vibe? I know it's not full skullet, but it's a nice mullet, mate. You've got it there in the background looking absolutely lovely. But, what's the go there, mate?
Yeah, I think I got it during COVID. I was in quarantine staying at Angus Glover's apartment with him when I decided that I was going to go with a mullet. I think as soon as I left, we went home and my brother, I gave my brother some clippers and he cut it, and I thought it looked awesome. And looking back at photos, it's like a 90-degree. It looks terrible. But yeah, it's gotten better since, and so it's a lot to deal with. I've had it permed once. It was a terrible idea. It cost me $400 and did nothing. But I have curly hair anyway. That's the last time I go to a salon. But no, it's I like it. Keeps people talking about me. So my brother thinks it's a great marketing idea. Well, if I don't have it, I look like a little kid, by the way. So I don't know if you've seen photos of me when I was my first year at the Kings, but yeah, I look like a little kid. If I pull it back into like a ponytail, it's not pretty. I look like a 12-year-old. So same as the mo, I have to keep it because if I get rid of it, I look like a baby. So
yeah, it's an interesting one. I've got the mullet. You can't really see it. It's not as flowy as yours, mate, but I love it. It's an unreal thing, and I've seen a few comparisons, and the boys were speaking about this on the show as well. How I'm not sure if you follow the AFL at all, but Luke Jackson, you've sort of got a little bit of a resemblance there with Luke. Obviously, you guys look super similar. I haven't seen you guys in the same room yet, so I can't confirm, obviously, if you are Luke Jackson or not. He obviously was a great basketball player back in the day, but what are some of the funny comparisons that you may have heard with, obviously, yourself? I know there's been Luke Travers as well in the NBL. He's had the flowy mullet and everything like that as well, but yeah, have you had some funny comparisons yet?
Yeah, I got Luke Jackson the other day again. It's pretty funny. Luke Jackson was at my we went in a team together for NBA prospects once, and I think that's the only time I ever met him. I didn't have a mullet back then. Again, I look like a kid. But yeah, no, I think just a lot of people who have mullets just into one category and say I look like them. So yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's a staple of, I guess, our generation, mate. I'm 25, so I think our generation have brought back the mullets. I think we can definitely say that, and the moustaches as well. So it's incredible, mate. But I'm looking forward to obviously seeing where your career goes, mate. I've really been appreciative of your time. It's been a really interesting chat, and I'm looking forward to obviously diving in. And like I said, mate, congratulations again and once again on the 2 years extension as well, mate. It's been really well deserved, and I'm looking forward to obviously seeing where this team continues to go and where it continues to sort of climb as well, because a lot of people are talking about dynasty over, and now Clint's gone. There's going to be even more talk about it, mate. But the foundations are with you young guys coming through, and obviously the experienced guys, and obviously with Scott Roth and the organisation as well, mate. But one more before we send you out. I was about to sign off, but who's the best teammate and who's the worst teammate? No, I'm not going to say worst teammate. I'm not saying they're the worst basketball player, but who's the most annoying that sort of gets the boys riled up from time to time?
I would say it would be both. Best teammate would be between Magnay and Sean McDonald.
Yep.
And worse would have to be Drimick and Fab. Those two are like a married couple. It's very funny. They're always together, arguing, fighting over nonsense. It's very funny, but I think they bring everyone into the conversation, so it gets a bit annoying sometimes. But no, it's all funny. It's good.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. I think if Jack was there as well, he might have been in the running for Jack McVeigh I speak of. He might have been in the running for that worst teammate category. I know, again, it's a loose term. It's probably not the best term. I've got to figure out a better way of saying it, mate. Maybe we'll I don't know, we'll figure something out. But yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. But Archie, mate, thank you very much for jumping on today's show. I've been really appreciative of your time. Obviously, it's a Saturday morning as of recording right now. I know you've got 101 things better to do than probably jumping on doing some media, mate. But no, it's been incredible, obviously, to learn your story, learn a bit more about you, and I hope as the years go on, mate, we keep in contact and we continue to tell your story as it goes along.
Yeah, no, definitely, and I really appreciate it. No, it was awesome.
No, thanks, Archie. I'll chat to you soon.
All right, thanks, mate. See ya.